There's a lot like this somewhere close to where you live. After dark, it quietly fills. By sunrise, it has emptied again. The cars sitting in it look unremarkable. So do the people who step out of them. Co-workers, neighbors, the sort of faces you would never glance at twice. Yet plenty of them did not pull in to grab groceries. They are not resting for 5 minutes. For them, that row of spaces is home. Tonight, somewhere near 900,000 people in this country will bed down in a car. None of it is about wanderlust. None of it is about chasing freedom. It is about running clean out of choices. And the detail that lands hardest is this. Nearly all of them work. Alarms go off. Shifts get covered. Their paychecks feed the same tax line yours does. They did what the rules asked, top to bottom. What they got back was a tilted seat and a window cracked for air. Call it what it is. This is not the romance of the road. It is what a nation turns into when paychecks fall behind rent for years on end. Eventually, a parking stall becomes the cheapest shelter a working person can still reach. Let me be precise. These are not folks who walked away. They are not folks who stopped showing up. The truth runs the other direction. They played it exactly right. The ground shifted under them regardless, and the count climbs every month. What unsettles me most is the hush around it. Put a tent on a sidewalk and a city scrambles. Park a quiet sedan with a sleeper inside and nothing stirs. So the whole thing grows without a sound. Stick with me. Once you clock who is actually inside those clouded windows, something shifts. A still parking lot will never read as empty again. Before we finish, I will lay out the arithmetic that landed them there. I will show you the machine that holds them in place. And the question no one with power wants to touch. So how does a person with a steady job wind up here? Go back to the bargain this country used to keep. Earn a wage, earn a roof. Clock in, stay sheltered. It was never a tagline. It sat underneath our pay, our benefits, our whole policy machine. Due most of our past, the logic felt obvious. Anyone working full-time could cover a home. Suggest otherwise, and people would have laughed. That logic has quietly died. It did not blow up in one bad year. It thinned out, slowly, one season at a time. While the people it failed were heads down at work. Watch how wide the gap grew. A one-bedroom that went for $1,200 a handful of years ago. These days, it lists nearer $2,000. Plenty of places. Higher. Wages never sprinted to catch that. Food climbed. Premiums on the car climbed. A single clinic visit climbed. And in that stretching space between the bills and the check, a quiet new fact took hold. You can clock 40 hours and still watch your housing slip away. Sit with that one. The groups falling out of housing fastest are not people who checked out of the workforce. They are clerks. They are pensioners. They are parents with kids in 3rd grade, still clocked in, still carrying their share, still grinding, yet they cannot keep a set of walls while the cost of living drifts ever higher. And the cruel trick is how ordinary they seem. Up close, they look completely fine. The people at the next desk never suspect. Even some relatives never suspect. They have practiced the art of seeming okay. There's also a hidden tier the official numbers skip entirely. The buddy parked on your couch since spring. The adult son back in his old twin bed. 2 near strangers having one apartment because alone neither can swing it. Not one of them counts as homeless on paper. Each of them sits one rough week from that same lot. And before you file this under someone else's problem, do the cold math on yourself. Count the missed checks between you and that edge. For most working households, the number is smaller than you would like. That is not panic. That is the sum most of us would rather not add up. Most of us imagine losing a home as one violent drop, a single catastrophe that flattens you overnight. It rarely arrives that way. Picture a guy. We will name him Marcus. He drives a forklift at a warehouse just past Phoenix, His pay sits a notch over the middle for that trade. Same employer, 4 years running. On paper, the man was solid. Then the building traded hands. Fresh owners. They snapped his rent up to market overnight, $600 more. He sat down and worked it through the way a level-headed person would. Relocate farther out and you eat the gas and the commute. Pick up a second gig and you are stacking pallets half asleep, which invites its own accidents. So he chose what looked like a stopgap. Into the truck he went. He banked every spare dollar. 90 days, he figured. That figure is a year and a half old now. Every cheaper place he aimed for kept floating beyond his grasp as he saved. The market ran. He could only trot behind it. A year and a half. Read that span again. Not one day in it did he quit reaching. He simply could not outrun the rent. So the truck is still where he sleeps. Surrender had nothing to do with it. The target just kept sliding past his fingers. His boss is in the dark. Every dawn, he scrubs down at a service station basin before clocking on. A tidy lie waits on his tongue for any coworker who asks his address. He knows precisely what happens the morning the mask cracks. He has seen it crack for others. Let a supervisor catch wind that you live in your car. Just like that, your stability becomes the reason you are gone. So he keeps the lie tight. And he keeps clocking in. None of that is a character flaw. That is a man standing dead still while the floor gets dragged out from beneath his boots. Here is why the eye slides right past it. A knot of tense builds visible heat. The press turns up. Meters feel cornered into acting. But a lot stacked with hushed cars registers as scenery. You roll by and clock a parking lot, nothing more. This kind of homelessness wears camouflage. A van tucked on a residential lane vanishes. A clan crammed in an SUV looks like every other car in a busy row. And the family's inside labor to keep it invisible. Crisp collars. A smooth story. One budget gym pass kept current for a single purpose, the dawn rinse before a shift. It refuses to fit the homelessness our heads were trained to expect. It mirrors everyone around it until your eye learns the tell. Now plant that same invisibility in the richest patch of ground on the planet. Santa Clara County angers Silicon Valley. There, the slice of homeless folks bunking in their vehicles more than doubled once the pandemic hit. The figure ran from 18% up to 37%. We are talking one of the fattest economies humanity has ever built. Firms valued in the hundreds of billions. And a swelling chunk of the county's unhoused close their eyes inside parked cars. A few are near enough to glimpse those very campuses. Hold that image a beat. Behind one pane of glass, some of the wealthiest corporations alive. Behind another, a pensioner dozing bolt upright in a sedan. One county. 1 week. The fortune is sitting right there. The willingness is not. The country never ran short on jobs. It ran short on homes its own workers could swing. Let that distinction settle, and the entire picture flips. None of this is the tale of people who tumbled out of the economy. It is the tale of people who stayed in. They did it all by the book and lost anyway. Before we push on, talk to me. What landed hardest for you up to here? Type it below. Knowing what hits home actually shapes what I dig into next. The moment a vehicle becomes the bedroom, a strange second economy boots up. Outsiders rarely glimpse it. Suddenly, any repair is a roof-level emergency. A coughing engine stops being a nuisance. It turns into a threat to the one shelter you own. A dying transmission is more than a bill. It is the single blow that can topple the whole arrangement. Catch a nail on the wrong dawn and you blow a shift. Blow a shift and you might get cut. Get cut and the rig can no longer be kept road legal. The people living it talk about a never-ending tally in their heads. Gas. When the tags expire, the hours the meter cops circle. The streets where a tow truck waits. The level in the propane bottle. Each item drops into a daily sum with no slack at all. Sit with what that does to a life. A snapped part is a Saturday headache for a housed family. For someone in a vehicle, it is the hairline between holding on and going under. Out in California's Central Valley works a mechanic. He grasps this far better than the officials above him. His shop sits beside a freight district. A good number of his customers plainly sleep where they park. Every time he tallies an estimate, he is not merely quoting parts and labor. He is ruling on whether a stranger keeps a roof. A transmission running $3,000 can be the stroke that ends a person's shelter. So he floats payment terms his books cannot really carry. He has seen the wreckage when he says no. Out of one Fresno garage, that man writes the housing policy the official system forgot to deliver. And now the road bends somewhere you probably will not predict. The country is not curing this. It is settling into it. Town after town has rolled out something branded as safe parking. Watched lots where vehicle dwellers may legally sleep the night. A toilet and a guard thrown in. At a glance, it reads as mercy. Now look again, slower. City halls are pouring lasting concrete so residents can take up residence in their cars, not as a quick plank toward better days, as a fixed feature for anyone shut out of ordinary housing. That is no remedy. That is a nation rebuilding its furniture around a wound it has elected to leave open. And running parallel, a quiet underground trade sprang up. Out in California, operators scoop up decaying campers. Then they lease them to cornered renters for $300 to $400 a month. No contract. No tenant rights. No inspector ever knocks. Picture a person banking rent on a dead camper at a curbside. The renters have absolutely nowhere left to turn. That math only pencils out once housing strain tops a threshold. We blew past that mark some time back and noticed the faces filling those lots. They are not some other breed of citizen. They are the same crew working 2 blocks away. The ones restocking aisles. The ones hauling your packages. The ones grinding the graveyard shifts that keep a town breathing. When a broken market turns into somebody's revenue stream, this stopped being a rough stretch. This is a fresh baseline cementing itself. And here comes the cruelest twist. We are being trained to file it under kindness. Tuck that away. It surfaces again at the close and it rearranges everything. So what is the standard municipal answer? Crackdowns. San Francisco dropped hard 2-hour parking caps, pointed squarely at the corridors where overnight car living had clustered. Over in Colorado Springs, bedding down in a vehicle on public ground is now against the law. A long list of cities widened their tow programs and their curfew bans. And each of those measures collides with one question no leader will face squarely. Go where, exactly? Hauling off a car does nothing to the poverty that drove someone into it. It only yanks away the final scrap of cover before the open sidewalk. Officials in these towns will say plainly who sleeps in those vehicles. Working people. Folks running from a violent partner. Elders on a fixed check. People gutted by one trip to the hospital. They crack down regardless. A visible move sells better than the slow work of rail repair. And the neighbors are no cartoon villains here. Their worries are legitimate. Trash. Danger. The noise. Those deserve a real hearing. Yet that is precisely the knot. Nobody wants their block decaying. Nobody can name where an evicted family is meant to wash up instead. Two fair-minded groups, both crushed by the identical broken market, get aimed at each other. Meanwhile, the architects of the crush stay safely off camera. And no one will reckon with the central sum. Take home $36,000 in a year. Then somehow swing a $2,000 apartment in the very city your job sits in. Those figures simply will not meet. So the brooms come through. Folks disperse. A block or two away, the identical scene rebuilds, since nothing below it ever moved. Nothing got fixed. It just changed addresses. And shuffling it is no cure. It is sleight of hand. The audience looks elsewhere. The trouble slides a few blocks over. Everyone agrees the street looks tidier. Nobody asks where the people went. That is not governance. That is statecraft. For a long while, one snapshot of car living ran our feeds. The lovingly redone van with its built-in bunk and warm fairy bulbs. Dawn over a ridge framed in the rear doors. A laptop perched at a canyon rim. Liberty. Less is more. A chosen exit from the dull middle. That snapshot buried something it should not have. The real thing wears none of that gloss. It wears the face of a woman in her late 60s. She restarts her phone alarm every hour and a half all night. She nudges the car forward before each 2-hour cap flips over. A single ticket could set off a tow she will never climb out of. It wears the face of a dad at a fuel pump at 5:40 in the morning. He cups water onto his cheeks, shirt tucked, then into a workplace that can never learn he has no mailing address. It wears the face of a kid of 12, wrapping up an assigned chapter. The only light is the dim spill of a charging cable. The battery is near dead. Mom and Dad are doling out the last of the power. That glossy road trip vocabulary handed the displaced a kinder word to hide behind. They go with traveler, nomadic, just between stops, because the label homeless still drags an anchor in this country. That weight does not lift just because the circumstances flipped, and that shame is half the reason the true totals almost surely beat the official sheets. Most car dwellers never set foot in a shelter. They skip the caseworker. They go uncounted, employed, on the move. There, but invisible to the system. If any of this is sharpening the picture for you, tap the like. It floats the video to more people. Slow down here. The next stretch weighs more. Imagine a household of 4 up in the Pacific Northwest. Mom, Dad, 2 girls, ages 9 and 13. Both adults hold jobs. Between them, the year clears a hair past $60,000. 6 years they kept the same unit under the same owner. Then that owner offloaded the building and the buyer snapped it to market. The rent leapt from $1,400 a month to $2,200. The numbers hit hard and fast. So into a leased camper they went. 3 months, they swore to each other. The 13-year-old caught on fast. What to skip when classmates probe about the weekend. Which parks open the bathrooms before first bell. How to wrap up coursework on a phone. The school portal wants Wi-Fi the camper does not carry. She got careful. That exact drilled weariness children grow in survival mode with nobody coaching them. Hushed, alert, braced. Right now, across this country, a few 100,000 kids live their own version of that. The harm is not some abstract worry. Shredded sleep. A steady hum of dread. A mind that cannot lock onto the lesson. Friendships quietly dropped. Researchers have logged every one of those as a result of drawn-out housing churn in childhood. They do not simply rewind once the family lands somewhere steady. A child hauls that rewiring forward for years. And those parents are not letting their kids down. They cover full shifts. They build the lunches. They sign the field trip forms. They carry out every plain parental task. All of it from inside a vehicle. All of it screened from a world primed to judge. The sheer work of making a family read as normal under that load is staggering. Almost no outsider sees 1 minute of it. Here lands the piece almost no one names. After someone slips into car homelessness, the climb back to steady housing does not ease. The months only make it worse and steeper. Most leasing offices want a fixed address before they will even open a file. The credit pull dredges up whatever wreckage came earlier. Old evictions surface. So do the utility bills that went unpaid. And the owners holding the most affordable doors screen hardest of all. Those are the precise units these families chase. With a line at the door, they can wave almost anyone off. Meanwhile, the churn keeps minting fresh trouble. One ticket grows into a fee. An unpaid fee curdles into a collections mark that craters a score. A cratered score slams the door on the next application. Tags expire because the renewal lost a fight with the grocery run. Expired tags then spit out fresh tickets. The whole thing rolls downhill while the person keeps clocking in, day after day, still on the schedule. Hardly outside the system at all. Wedged deep within it, every door bolted from the far side. And the so-called net carries a trap of its own. A lot of subsidized housing rides the poverty line, not the real cost of staying alive. So, the second someone edges up, lands the raise, accepts the better title, the help can evaporate. They wind up further behind than before they tried. The setup spanks the exact move it pretends to encourage. That is the real engine of modern poverty. No clean plunge, a grinding wear, where each new snag stacks weight on the next, and the wear quickens the longer it runs. One slice of this catches nearly everybody flat-footed. Forget the kids who never got rolling. Forget the new grads drowning in loans. We are talking older Americans. The 55 and up crowd. People who, by every familiar yardstick, had cleared the hard miles already. Among the fastest swelling groups now sleeping in vehicles sit the seniors, decades on the clock. Steady contributions into the system year after year. They took the guidance handed to them on building a settled life. Then they hit retirement, only to find the settled part had been quietly stripped out from beneath them. Meet a woman, call her Diane. 3 decades in 1 year delivering mail for the post office. She hung it up at 64, holding a small but genuine pension and one concrete, sensible plan. A 2-bedroom in the city that held her whole working life. 3 years past retirement, her building flipped to market pricing. The pension does not flex. It cannot swallow a $600 climb. One by one, her choices closed off, until the only one left standing was a second-hand motorhome. She handed over $11,000 for it. She sets up on public ground, out past a tiny town in the desert. Twice a week, she rolls into the city for doctor visits. And when she lays out her circumstances, she steers clear of words like collapse or defeat. She picks a single word, soft-voiced. No theatrics. Adjustment. She adjusted down to whatever she could still cover. It is such a calm syllable for something so brutal. It carries none of the sound of a home slipping away. That is exactly why it travels. The gentle words are the ones nobody bothers to fight. That same word keeps bubbling up among people in her shoes. From the top, it can pass for serenity, for somebody at peace with the ground they stand on. But what sits beneath it weighs a great deal more. An entire way of living quietly turned in. A retirement that was supposed to wear a different face. And a nation pocketing those surrenders one soul at a time. So long as each one unspools gently enough, no one is forced to stare straight at what just vanished. Now let me put a name to the angle scholars have only lately started to voice, because it tilts the whole frame. Batting down in a vehicle is not purely a housing matter. Strip it down and it is a labor matter. And the wiring between the two is something the economy profits by keeping in the shadows. Once workers cannot pay to live anywhere near the job, the boss picks up quiet muscle. It surfaces in no quarterly filing. A worker who cannot say where tonight's bed will be holds almost zero leverage. They cannot ride out even a brief stretch between paychecks. They cannot lean on the company for fairer pay or safer floor. A person with locked-in rent can. They cannot. So they grab the punishing shifts. They eat the hazards. They cling to underpaying roles way past sense. Because quitting does not just risk a little comfort. It risks the roof. Whole industries hum along at full headcount, while a wedge of that headcount sleeps in nearby lots. The labor economists have a flat, ugly phrase for the result: housing insecurity as labor suppression. When a steady place to sleep stops being a given, the will to push back caves in. Pay settles below what a sound market would set. Conditions rot past what they otherwise should. And here comes the part that stings. This is no malfunction. From the top floor, this is the machine humming exactly to spec. A frightened, unhoused workforce is a bargain. Obedient. On tap whenever needed. Which is the whole reason nobody with leverage is hurrying to mend it. The hurt sits on the worker. The upside floats to the top. Loop back to Marcus at that station sink. He cannot ask for more money. He cannot gamble a week with no pay. He cannot even hint to his boss at the truth. Box a worker in like that, and he will take nearly anything. And the people cutting his checks understand that perfectly. So put the question to yourself. In a setup like that, who actually stands to gain from changing it? Once the pandemic passed, the price of secondhand campers jumped. Models that used to move for $3,000 to $5,000 suddenly fetched double or triple. No vacation craze drove it. Americans had started buying clapped-out RVs as crisis shelter. It was a buffer against a broken home market. That market no longer moved in any rhythm a family could plan against. But that buffer is caving now. Pressure from every side at once. Premiums on aging rigs jumped hard. Campgrounds and RV parks hit jammed to the brim across most of the map. Waitlist for a permanent hookup run out past several months. Towns keep screwing down the overnight rules these dwellers were leaning on. And the rigs themselves are giving out. Loads of them have 20-some years on the odometer. Bought for a song precisely because they were already beaten. Now they buckle under being lived in every single day. They were never engineered to go the distance. Track the slide. First the apartments floated out of reach, then the weekly motels priced out, then the campgrounds packed full. Now the rig itself is harder to run, harder to cover, harder to park, harder to mend. Each backstop blinks out in turn, and nothing assembles below it to grab whoever drops. Here sits the bitter punchline. The cheapest door always hides the steepest tab. The beat-up camper read like a rescue at the start. Within months, it turns into a bottomless repair bill. It eats fixes the family was never set up to cover. The very thing they grab to halt the fall is often the thing that completes it. The rungs keep snapping off, and the gap below the lowest one keeps stretching. Under the spreadsheets and the broken policy, something tougher to measure is in motion, and it reaches well past any housing tally. A working society leans on a common faith in tomorrow. People shoulder a hard present because they bank on an easier future. They borrow for degree betting on bigger paychecks. They skip the purchase now, wagering on more later. They raise kids trusting they can provide. That tilt toward tomorrow is more than a sunny mood. It is load-bearing. It is the silent bet that makes the grind feel worth something. But car homelessness is breeding a population that quit facing forward. Not from sloth. Not from some drained ambition. From plain, repeated, lived proof. They did the things they were told to do. They put in the hours. They gave their share. They kept to the rules. And the payout was a parking lot. Nailing the plan and still ending up adrift does not leave a person upbeat about round two. It clamps the field of view down to right now. The gas gauge today. Tonight's safe stall. The next shift. A big swath of people pinned in that gear has quietly backed out. They have left the long bargain that keeps a society intact, and it leaves fingerprints you can measure. Birth rates sinking, fewer lasting couples forming, civic life thinning out, faith in institutions wearing through. None of that is some hazy mood swing. It is a straight reaction to insecurity that will not let up. Poll after poll lands on the same answer. Most Americans could not cover a real emergency bill without reaching for credit. Tens of millions on a payroll are carrying under a single month's cushion. Living check to check is no fringe story. Down the middle, it is just the working life. That is why this cuts so deep, even for the people not living it. You spot the courier sacked out in the lot behind the depot, and in a corner you would rather skip. You sense it. How flimsy the wall is between that life and yours. A single layoff, a single diagnosis, a single rent hike, a single breakdown on the wrong day. The exact spark differs person to person. the underlying drop-off nearly all of us share. Mending this would demand a sentence politicians of every stripe have flatly refused to speak. It would mean admitting it out loud. A full-time job in this country no longer secures a steady home. Not for a big and growing slice of working people. And that one admission blows up the bedrock of decades of policy. Programs to retrain. The Earned Income Tax Credit. Bumps to the minimum wage. Nearly all of it leans on one belief. That a job is the cure for housing trouble. That regular work yields a settled life. That the route out runs straight through employment. Car homelessness is shredding that belief in plain sight. In parking lots. At a count nearing 1 million souls, home prices spent years climbing on dirt-cheap loans, on giant funds hoovering up houses by the block, on a construction pipeline choked nearly shut, on raw speculation. They drifted so far over wages across so many cities that grit alone can never bridge it. You will not out-earn a market sprinting ahead of your income. By the very arithmetic, you cannot. Sit with that. There is no saving your way clear of a problem this structural. There is no budgeting around a market engineered to outrun you. The old line about just hustling harder was doomed from the start. The numbers were stacked against you before you ever punched the clock. This is not a drive problem. It is not a grit problem. It is arithmetic baked into the structure itself. And the bodies that could actually attack the roots are the ones knotted up tightest in politics. Federal money for housing. Local rules on what gets built where. Construction code. Caps on who can scoop up homes by the thousand. A town council cannot patch a nationwide supply collapse on its own. Towing a car raises not one new home. A safe parking lot raises not one new home. And the speed of building affordable units keeps trailing the speed at which the need expands. Hold one more question. Other rich nations face the identical pressures. They have not made car sleeping the norm for working people. They chose differently. So none of this was written in stone. It was decided. Choice after choice. And a fresh set of choices could decide the other way. There comes a moment when a society quits treating a thing as an emergency. It files the thing under ordinary scenery. The plainest signal that the line is behind us is this. A government lays down permanent fixtures around the problem. Then it dresses those fixtures up as mercy rather than the surrender they are. The sanctioned parking, the supervised camper lots, the overnight spots winked at in the warehouse districts. None of it solves a housing crisis. All of it just bends to one. And once a system rebuilds itself wholesale around constant instability, the U-turn gets brutally hard. The workaround hardens into the expectation. The expectation hardens into the standard. And the standard slides down to a place a single generation ago would not recognize. Now let me grant one thing, because it counts. For a handful of people, picking a paid-off reg over a predatory lease is shrewd. It is a real financial play. A way to wrestle back a little command from a market that quit dealing straight. There is genuine dignity in that. It earns respect, not pity. Some of these folks are not running up any white flag. They are making a clear, hard-eyed call. They sized up a rigged table and walked away from it. That takes spine, not surrender. But that is the very spot where the heartbreak lives. The room to choose that life is closing. The crowd shoved into it with no say keeps swelling. The postcard version is sliding into luxury. The survival version is hardening into the floor. None of this fell from the sky. None of it landed in a night. It got assembled inch by inch, through long years of widening gaps, of homes treated as casino chips, of pay frozen in place, of debt piling on the kitchen table, and of a politics paralyzed on the only questions that count. The vehicle turned into the release valve welded onto the tail of that chain, the escape hatch on wheels, the last wall standing between a working wage and the curb. That wall is splitting. The argument over whether this is real is finished and settled. The live question is sharper. Does this country finally name it the emergency it plainly is? Or does it keep molding itself around the problem, stall by stall, until even this sunken floor stops looking wrong to anyone? So I will hand it to you. If you could repair one thing first, what would it be? One change to put a real home back within reach of working people. Say it down below. I read all of them.